yes, I'm Jane Duncan Rogers, and I'm here to help you get your end of life plan actually done. What we're going to do is a short presentation. I'll tell you a little bit more about myself. If you've got questions, please keep them, make a note of them, and we'll deal with all that at the end, because it's only the presentation bit that's being recorded. And let me just make sure that I can see what's going on here. Yeah. Okay. Right. So why am I doing this at all? Well, I don't have any children, and my husband died about 9 years ago, nearly 10 years ago now, and I was 53 at that time, and we were catapulted into this situation where, well, we suddenly, both of us, he was quite a bit older than me. He was like 12 years older than me, but neither of us had thought about this kind of stuff before. Here's a picture of us. Died within the year. He had stomach cancer, and we learned a lot, of course, during that last year. And 3 years after that, I had written a book. Now, my book was called Gifted by Grief. I'll show you in a moment. I tell you, I did not feel gifted by grief when it first started. I mean, it was awful. My husband died, and some of you who have also lost a partner, you will recognize that. It's horrible. But eventually I discovered that there was some kind of a gift in the grief. Now, here's the unusual thing. In that book, I thought that people would like all these spiritual awakenings and amazing things that had happened in the 3 years after Philip died. But in fact, they asked me about the questions in the chapter where I had written about the questions I'd asked him before he died, and they were really practical ones. We'd only done it because a friend had nagged us, in fact 3 times in an email, because I ignored the first 2 emails. And but there were things like, what kind of coffin do you want? How do you want your body dressed? What are your passwords? Really practical things. And you know, it's not easy to answer those questions at the best of times, but it's definitely not easy when you are actually facing your life ending, because by that point we knew we had only a few months left, of probably. So that book led, there's that book there. It led also to me setting up a social enterprise, Before I Go Solutions. The second book in the middle there, Before I Go, The Essential Guide to Creating a Good End of Life Plan. And then down here, the workbook, that is that's a list of all the questions, a bit more research now, with space for you to put the answers in. And that's basically either a print version, or you can have it as a fillable PDF. So that's a place, if you want to keep all your stuff in one place, that's a good way to do it. And then just this week, we've got the end of life planning cards that came out. So I'm very excited about those, because those are new, but I'll tell you more about that later. Right now, I want to move on to just show you a statistic where it says that only 21% of people have actually written anything down about their end of life. Now, the majority of people think this is a good idea to do, but they don't actually do it. Unfortunately, that means that a lot of families are suffering unnecessarily, because the fact is we're not getting our act together and we're not getting things written down. Now, one of the reasons why this is important is because after you've gone, when people are grieving, we all think that grief happens like this. You're bereaved 1 minute, and then after a bit of time, you'll be managing in a different way, but you will manage, because that is what happens to most people. But here's what it's really like. And those of you who've been bereaved will know it's a right mess. And your emotions are all over the place, up and down, backwards and forwards, roundabout. And you have to still look after the remains of somebody's life. So you may have taken care of the funeral and all the rest of it, but there's still quite a lot to be done. So what is an end of life plan? There are 3 elements to a good end of life plan, which includes all the legals. It includes, let me go on to, I haven't got another slide yet. Okay, let me quickly say, the end of life plan includes all the legals, that's the power of attorney, the will, the advance directive, but it also includes all your funeral organization, not just a plan necessarily, but the organization of it. It includes the decluttering of your house, otherwise known as death cleaning at this kind of age. It includes the thinking about how you want the last days of your life to be, or the last weeks or months, because we don't know what it's going to be like. But the more information you can give to people, the better. These days, it includes your digital life, if you have a digital presence. And many people have a digital presence, even when they don't realize it. So, but the real challenge is, because you probably know about quite a lot of these things already, the real challenge is, what are the 3 elements of getting a plan done? And that's what we're going to talk about today. So the first one is discuss. There's 3 Ds coming up. First one, whoops, that wasn't supposed to happen. There we are. The first one is discuss. This is, I imagine, some of the stuff that you do in AWOC, discuss about this sort of thing. We've heard from some people already that they don't know what to do, or they've appointed an executive, but they're maybe not entirely happy about that because they're older or whatever. But if you're on your own, who do you discuss things with? Mostly people say discuss with your family. But if you don't have a family, or if the family is so far away that dealing with the practicalities makes it difficult, then the fact is you've got a great resource in this group of people who are interested in the same boat. And I would really be encouraging you to do even more discussion if that's what's needed. The second D is deciding, making a decision. You don't want things to be on your to-do list for 13 years, like it says in this little animation here. You may have already made decisions about some things. You may not be deciding about other things. You may still be in the process of discussing, but it is really important to make these decisions, because it's only by doing that that you can come on to the next step, which is documenting it all. And this is the writing it down. And this is the bit actually that people have most difficulty with, is what we've discovered over the years. In fact, I realized that Before I Go Solutions also started in the same year as AWOC. So we're companions on the journey, if you like. With documenting, so this is not just your will and legal stuff. It's about writing things down, either in your Before I Go workbook, or in a journal, or a loose leaf folder, whatever it is. If, by the way, if you haven't got a death folder yet, I highly recommend setting one up just in your house, somewhere where you put everything to do with the end of your life in there, so that whoever it is coming after you knows where to find it really easily. The thing about documenting stuff, I think, is that when you put it down on paper, it kind of feels like it might be a bit fixed and you can't change it. But if you notice that you're having that kind of challenge, then I would really encourage you to put your thoughts down on paper anyway, no matter what area of end-of-life planning it is, because the act of putting it down on paper helps you to get clear about what you want, because it's almost like you're viewing it in a different way. Okay, let's just move on. Right, yes. So the next slide. This is a really good sentence to bear in mind when you're not sure exactly if you really are making the right decision. It's good enough for now, and it's safe enough to try. It's just one that is good to remember, because you can change these things. You can change any decisions that you make. Of course you can. It's your life, your death. Okay, how to get your plan actually done? Well, that's a lot of what we do at Before I Go Solutions, is help people actually do it, because there's a lot of talking. Well, actually, there needs to be more talking in society about this subject, but there's still quite a lot of talking, but there's not so much action being taken. So I came up with this mnemonic, Project Commitment Resources, PCR, and how I remember that is a pony eating a carrot standing on a rug. It's got nothing to do with anything, but it's how I remember these 3 things. And the reason that you want to be thinking about this as a project is because you can break it down into tasks. It's really important. So when we think of end-of-life planning, there's several different areas, and each of those areas can get broken down into other little tasks, so that you can take one bite at a time. This is really, really important. One step at a time, one bite at a time, just one little thing. Even if you only answered one question every week, at least you would be making some progress. And that's what, so let me just give you some examples here of a bite-sized chunk. You might ring the lawyer to make an appointment. Now that in itself is just a small action, because then you've got an appointment. The next action would be attending that appointment. You might buy a book on the subject, but then you don't want to just have that book on your shelf, but buying it is the first task. Getting it read or reading one of the chapters is another task, and then acting on the reading. Do you see how I'm breaking it down here? That's really important. Otherwise, it's so easy to get overwhelmed. So you can see there are different suggestions, but I think you probably get the idea. And then let us just go to commitment. Commitment. Okay, this is you honoring yourself. That's what this photograph is supposed to be representing. You with your hand in your heart, promising yourself that you're going to commit to this. And if it is a project, that means there's a beginning and there's an end. And all of you are probably somewhere in the middle. I don't know where. Maybe you're towards the end. Maybe there's some bits that you've done, some bits that you haven't quite yet done. But seeing it through to the end is really important, and that is a commitment to yourself. And yeah, on that, there will be obstacles. Obstacles will get in the way. I write about those in much more detail in my book. I'll say more about that later. But I think along with commitment comes the importance of committing yourself to overcome the obstacles, no matter what they are. Okay, we can talk more about that later. Right, the third thing is the resources. So I've got some resources up here. I've mentioned my book. Now, if you haven't got a copy of my book, but I think maybe Sue has, but as a group, I would suggest that this might be something good for you to do, because it goes through all the details of what you need to have for an end-of-life plan and some of the thinking behind it. And there's even a short chapter in there about aging without children. Of course, I was going to write about that because it's important for me. I've put the end-of-life planning cards there because they are I wouldn't call it a game, but I would call, there's a series of activities in that card pack that help you either on yourself or with a group of people or with just one other person to have a bit more of a creative and fun way of dealing with this kind of thing. And then in the middle there, I'm recommending a book called The Art of Dying Well by Katie Butler. Now, she's based in America. So it is American, right? All the resources and all the things that she talks about are about the American health system. However, I haven't finished it yet, but when I read it, when I started reading it, I thought, oh yes, this is good to mention, because she talks about people in our kind of category, i.e. the ones who are approaching the end of their life, some of us a bit nearer than others. And there are some things that we need to be thinking of, and some of you have highlighted those. So it's definitely worth having a look at. And then this is another resource for those of you who are like to be on the internet, would like to store information on the internet. This is a good organization that I can highly recommend to upload all your stuff very safely and securely. In the groups that we do, often people have very strong opinions about this. They either want to do this because they think this is the safest way, or they think it's definitely not safe and they still want to keep it, all their documentation that is very private, in their secret hidey hole at home. And that's fine. Whatever it is that works for you is best to do. Okay, so I'm just going to, one more thing, just in 2 more slides now. This is the penultimate one. I haven't got any time is the thing that most people say that gets in the way of doing this kind of stuff. But actually, lots of people did have time in lockdown, and did lots of people do this work? No, they didn't do it. So we all have to tell the truth, which is that when you really want to do something, you find time to do it, don't you? But with this, you're not doing it really for yourself. Well, you are in a way, because it's really going to benefit you. You'll get a lot of relief from having done it, I can tell you. But the major amount of appreciation that you're going to get is after you've gone and you won't be around to receive it. So it's a very selfless thing to do. However, final slide, a good end of life plan is a great going away present.